and management of Pacific Telestations Incorporated. You're watching Buzz with Jess Lujan.
Good evening, Guam. I'm Jess Lujan. Welcome to this edition of The Buzz. Very exciting show tonight. I have Senator Dennis Rodriguez Jr., the chairman of the Committee on Health, and also Cecile Arciaga, who's the program coordinator for tuberculosis and what is that? Leprosy. Ooh. Anyway, thank you, Senator and Cecile, for being here. And actually, I'm glad that we were able to come in today. We were trying really hard. I know you guys were working really hard in regards to these testings for the school students. But thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule again to explain to us this process and how we got here. And we could talk about the political side with the senator. But thank you very much for that. Senator, you had a bill that was supposed to be heard yesterday, based on the national shortage and possibly trying to fend this off, basically in regards to the national shortage, which affects us. I hope this is not a result of sequestration, but seems like it probably is. It touches on that. And I talked about this in my radio show. I go, man, this is a slippery slope. Yes. This is damn if you do, damn if you don't. Right. You know, and I said, but what else could we do? Because this is law, and you know, and likewise, students need to get to school. And the only relief we can do, I mean, the governor could not through executive order, because executive order doesn't trump law. Right. So you needed to step in, and you know, your prayers were answered. that you didn't have to hear those, you know, didn't have to hear that bill, and so now I think we're all right. Again, the genesis of that, I think I said that, but explain where we're at today.
Sure. Again, thank you very much, Senator, for having us here. Yes, you know, I was approached by both Public Health and DOE, you know, about the shortage. This was about maybe 12 days ago, you know, almost 2 weeks ago. And they said, okay, we have the situation where current law requires every new student to get tested for, you know, to get this TB screening. But the problem was there was a national shortage, and Public Health wanted to reserve the supply they had on hand for the real need. In case someone does test positive, you know, whoever was in contact with that person must be screened and tested. So they want to make sure they have that supply. So we had a stakeholders roundtable meeting down at the legislature. We called the professionals with the experts in and said, okay, what is the situation? What are the different options? One of the options they brought up was, okay, we need to amend the statute to temporarily suspend the requirement for students. Although I had a very heavy heart in doing that, because we know this is something that our island, our community has been very used to in saying, okay, we must test every student that comes in, especially the young kindergarteners, Head Start, right? So even though I had a heavy heart, I listened to the professionals. I listened to the public health expert that said, Senator, right now, even the Centers for Disease Control, CDC, is recommending a revision in the way they do mass TB screening. And so even though I agreed with them and I support the efforts in perhaps looking at revising it, I told them the time frame between we had to do the testing and when school starts was very short. And to do something like this, you must have a real, you know,
urgency.
Yeah,
emergency.
That's right. An education of the community and saying what we're doing. So, because we had, you know, timelines in place for the public hearing, the notice, we said, okay, we immediately introduced legislation to temporarily to give the governor the authority to suspend the requirements. But in the meantime, we continue to work with Public Health and DOE to look at every option. And one of the options was looking at procuring these kits despite the shortage. So GSA stepped in and got, you know, and found a vendor that was able to bring in these additional test kits. And so that's where we're at today. Okay, so where we're at today, and you know, we'll talk about statute maybe in a revision of that. Where we're at today, you guys are hard at work again testing kids. You're going to be out again tomorrow with that. Okay. Now, I mean, are you right where you're supposed to be at this point, or you know, because of the shortage, this thing should have been done already? But are you again doubling your duty at this point because school does start Monday?
Well, we were assured that supplies are coming in until Saturday, so we are still using our buffer supply right now to cope up, and we only screened actually 178 today
okay.
at the mall, and we'll be back tomorrow from 10 to 12, and to screen the remaining students that need to be tested.
Now, let me ask you, what is required for folks, parents bringing in their kids, or even guardians bringing in their kids? What is required of them to bring in, and is it? I mean, what if somebody comes in that has an insurance that could pay for it? I mean, how do you screen them out as again, someone is urgent that really needs the service, that really doesn't have the means to pay for this thing?
With our press release, we are only giving screen testing for those with MIP, with Medicaid, and
so they
those
have to
with
show
no
their
insurance.
current cards.
But of course, as public health, we have no way of checking that. But if they say if they have no insurance, we have to take their word for that as well.
Okay.
But of course, we have to review their shot records, whether they really need to have a screen test, because there's about 28 clients that came into the mall, which had to turn away because they didn't really need a skin test at all. So they're screened even before we process them for testing.
Okay. Now let me ask you this now, Senator, with this, and maybe Cecile, you can chime in as well. We know there's a process. We know there's a timeline from the testing to the reading.
Correct.
Will there be enough time from the folks that were tested today, or even tomorrow, to be able for those results to be read, for them to be able to go to school on Monday?
Yes. For those that were tested today, all the students or the parents were advised to bring their child to their respective schools, because the school nurses will be there on Friday on hand to be able to do the testing. And those that will be tested tomorrow, we will be at the mall around the same time for the reading as well. And that will be on Saturday for the reading that were tested today.
Now, Senator, we know that there's always people that didn't yield to what they were told, Yes. Would the schools be ready again with, we know that not all schools have school nurses, but would they be ready for the schools that are probably getting the majority of students that got the late testing, basically? Would they be ready and equipped by maybe some medical personnel to do the reading? Otherwise, if they're not read, they won't be allowed to school. I mean, the law is still in place.
That's right. Well, in our discussions with DOE, they are working very hard to ensure that they are properly prepared for this. And so I know that the nurses, will be at the different schools, and if not, some other, logistical options are being looked at as well.
Okay, well, and that's good, and it's good to hear that. Cecile, the people that are tested today, the parents that whose kids were tested today, when are they supposed to come in to be read?
For those that are tested today, they're supposed to show at the kids' school by Friday.
Okay, so they go to their prospective schools,
Yes.
And be read?
Because as we process the students, we ask exactly what school they'll be attending. So these consent forms will be forwarded to the schools they're attending. And the nurses will be on hand to make sure that
at those particular schools.
On time. At the particular school.
And you've got a time that the nurses will be there to read.
That's correct. And also I've met with the chief of the nurses, which is Ms. Kennedy. And she'll make sure that the schools are well staffed to be able to do the reading on time.
Chief of nursing for DOE or for public health?
For GDOE.
GDOE.
Yes.
Okay. Now the kids that will be tested tomorrow, when are they supposed to be read?
We will be at the mall on Saturday for the reading. So please, they make it on time.
So tomorrow's testing will require the reading on Saturday at the mall, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So be responsible, parents. The least you can do.
Because otherwise you can't be in school on Monday.
Well, as I said, I mean, you can only do so much, right?
Yes, exactly.
If I'm giving you for free, the least you can do is to come in and have it read, I mean, save the taxpayers. That's another story. That's another story, Senator. Anyway, let's go back to this situation here, because we were talking before the senator came in. We were talking about requirements now, because it's every school year we seem to get a couple stories where somebody in this school tests positive for TB, and we know that person had to have had a testing earlier in the school year. What happens? What happens with that? I mean, and why does that happen? I mean, we have these strict things. We have laws that say you have to do this, but it still happens. Is there a ditch somewhere that we're not quite going over. What's the problem here?
We're really fortunate on Guam that we're doing routine testing. Although CDC doesn't recommend across the board testing because the yield is very low.
Okay.
Now, even if a student was tested every year, it doesn't guarantee that they won't catch TB.
Okay.
But what is important is that if a child is getting sick, or even an adult who has a fever of more than 2 weeks, unexplained weight loss, cough of more than 2 weeks, fever, usually late in the afternoon, they got to see a doctor. Because this could be the signs of possibly active TB. Because the thing here is early diagnosis and treatment. You can test someone every year.
Yeah.
On time, but anything can happen in between.
And you also told me that the kids have a higher immunity than the adults do, right?
Not really.
Not really?
Actually, children are at the highest risk of developing active TB or being exposed to someone with active TB.
Okay, okay.
So that's why when we have a kid who has a positive skin test, we automatically do a chest X-ray to find out the status. Is it active or is it just dormant? But for the most part, even if you're exposed to someone with active TB, it doesn't necessarily mean you will develop the disease right away. For the most part, these germs will just stay dormant in your system and can stay dormant forever.
Now let me ask you this, because I mean, you know, we know that smoking is prevalent here in this island, and Senator Rodriguez has championed a bunch of laws against that. But we know that it's prevalent here. It's like one of the #1 causes for illnesses. But the situation in regards to, say, coughing, people who are coughing over 2 weeks, how do you distinguish between, say, a smoker's cough, you know, say, hey, I've been coughing for 3 years for this thing, you know? How do you distinguish between that kind of cough and a possibility of maybe even a TB? Because, you know, if you're a father or mother in the family, or even an adult in that family, and you have kids here, I mean, you can, you know, if you have active TB, you can give it to them. So how do you distinguish between, say, a flu cough, a smoker's cough, and a TB cough? But I tell you what, answer when we get back from the break, eh?
Okay.
I got to pay some bills. Be right back.